Elsewhere, for the Duke of Sussex, he's going to discover whether he's won a Court of Appeal challenge over his security arrangements while in the UK. And with us to tell us all about this and what we might expect is GB News royal correspondent Cameron Walker. Cameron, tell us, big day for Prince Harry as well as the nation.
A huge day, and it is very imminent. In the next few minutes, we are expecting to get that judgment from the judges at the Court of Appeal. If you remember, Prince Harry, when he stood back as a working member of the royal family, his security was downgraded alongside his wife Meghan as well. Prince Harry did not like that, and so he launched a court case which ended up in a 2023 judgment at the High Court, which upheld RAVEC's decision. Now, RAVEC stands for the Royal and VIP Executive Committee. It's a Home Office committee which decides the level of protection each individual member of the royal family receives. And they decided, because of Prince Harry's change in status, that he is not entitled to the automatic 24/7 taxpayer-funded police protection that senior members of the royal family and government ministers get. But Prince Harry's legal team have argued that he's been singled out and he was given inferior treatment, and Prince Harry actually alleged that the reason his security was downgraded was because those men in grey suits inside Buckingham Palace wanted to force him and Meghan to stay in the United Kingdom. Now, Buckingham Palace sources have denied that, but he told The Telegraph when this went to this appeal hearing last month that people would be shocked by some of the private evidence that was heard at this appeal, because there's lots of national security issues to do with this case, which had to be held in private. So we actually don't know all the evidence that was presented to these appeal judges, but we are, in the next few moments, going to decide. They're going to decide what was given. Now, Prince Harry's lawyer has also said in court, and this was held in open court, that there has been a specific threat against Prince Harry's life from Al-Qaeda. That's the kind of level of threats that they are arguing means Prince Harry should be entitled to 24-hour police protection when he's in the UK. Now, the Home Office has defended its decision and says the approach has been appropriate given Prince Harry's change in status. We're just watching, for those of you on television, live pictures from inside the Royal Courts of Justice, where those three judges are about to deliver their verdict as to whether or not Prince Harry has been successful in his appeal.
Well, we can cross over now to hear the judgment in the Duke of Sussex's Court of Appeal over his security
which has been prepared so as to assist the public and the press to understand what exactly the court has decided. It should, however, be understood by all that the full judgments themselves are the only authoritative version of what has been decided. We will have some hard copies of both the press summary and the full judgments here to let you have after the hearing. But the judgment will be uploaded as usual this afternoon to the case law section of the National.
Right, well, it's just frozen for a little bit. You may have noticed that's the Royal Courts of Justice as we wait for this. Cameron, what can we expect? What are the stakes here for Prince Harry?
Well, if he wins, that's a monumental victory for Prince Harry, because it means that the High Court ruling from 2023 would have been overturned. And what that could mean is that the Royal and VIP Executive Committee of the Home Office is forced to reconsider whether or not to reinstate Prince Harry's 24/7 taxpayer-funded police security. But of course, if he loses, then that is another blow to Prince Harry. Now, he could take it to the highest court in Milan, the Supreme Court, but there'd have to be a pretty, huge matter of public importance for that appeal to be heard at the UK Supreme Court. If there was another specific threat against Prince Harry, and having lost the Court of Appeal case, he could well launch another judicial review because there is then new evidence. But then he's right back to square one, and there's no guarantee that in 2 years' time he'll be right back again losing his appeal.
You were talking about there's this evidence that we don't know about. Could that be things like direct threats to his life that we haven't been told about?
Yeah, quite possibly. Yeah. And also it would be the kind of level of security arrangements that are given to other members of the royal family, which they wouldn't want in the public domain, because obviously then other members, it'll be easier to target other members of the royal family as well, or indeed senior government ministers. Now, he does, of course, have private security. He pays for that in the United States, and they do accompany him over here in the United Kingdom. But with the private security firm, they are not legally allowed to carry firearms when they're in the United Kingdom, and they don't have, crucially, access to MI5 secret intelligence, which the Metropolitan Police have access to. So that's why Prince Harry argues it's inferior. Hopefully we can bring that judgment to you as and when we get it.
I think, Cameron, we can go back to the Court of Appeal now, where Sir Geoffrey Voss is speaking. I'm not sure we can go back just now, but Sir Geoffrey Voss is going to be reacting to the Home Office's legal team, who said that the working royal had created a unique set of circumstances by choosing to leave the United Kingdom, Cameron.
Yeah, he certainly did. And I think Prince Harry, in his memoir Spare, actually wrote about do you remember the Sandringham summit of 2020, early 2020, where Prince Harry, alongside his brother William, Charles and the late Queen, were in a room with their most senior age, basically negotiating the Megxit, so-called Megxit deal of Harry leaving the UK. And it was decided then that he couldn't be half in, half out. And he had Metropolitan Police protection in Canada when they first left the United Kingdom in the interim, but then was told that that police protection would be taken away from him, and it was. And he has said in the past that he was pretty shocked by that decision. And of course, in the back of Prince Harry's mind all the time is what happened to his mother in that car crash in Paris.
And that was in September 2021 when he started this dispute with Ravek. When he returned for an unveiling of a statue of his late mother, Diana, his car was reportedly chased by photographers, bringing that concern to the forefront of his mind.
Yeah, and another incident perhaps in New York is when Prince Harry's spokesperson described him and Meghan's taxi car chase as a near catastrophic one. There are recollections may vary, as some people who witnessed that car chase through the gridlock streets of New York would perhaps contest Prince Harry's version of events. However, the point still stands that his mother did tragically die in a car crash in Paris, being pursued by paparazzi. She also did not have her police protection with her, because she, of course, by that point had divorced the then Prince Charles, was no longer an HRH. But it was, I must point out, her decision to have that security taken away. This is not Prince Harry's decision to have his security taken away. So
if you're just joining us, we are waiting for that Prince Harry security ruling to come from Sir Geoffrey Voss, and we're back. Let's listen.
Inferior treatment as compared to all others protected by Ravek. In effect, it had been predetermined in the decision letter that on future visits to the UK, the Duke of Sussex would be provided with a lower level of security than had been provided for him throughout his adult life. This demonstrated, submitted Ms. Fatima, that something had gone wrong with the process. She submitted that the claimant was still subject to the same risks as he was before he stepped back from royal duties, and that the impact of an attack upon him was obviously still just as significant as it has always been. His military service, she said, placed him at particular risk. Although it was not suggested that no security provision had been made, the Duke of Sussex strongly criticised the adequacy of what Ravek had determined was appropriate. I said in my judgment that these were powerful and moving arguments, and I said that it was plain that the Duke of Sussex felt badly treated by the system. But I concluded, having studied the detail of the extensive documentation, I could not say that the Duke's sense of grievance translated into a legal argument for the challenge to Ravek's decision. The legal question, indeed the only question for the court, was whether Sir Richard had failed to follow Ravek's policy without a good reason. From the Duke of Sussex's point of view, I said that something may indeed have gone wrong, in that an unintended consequence of his decision to step back from royal duties and spend the majority of his time abroad has been that he's been provided with a more bespoke and generally lesser level of protection than what he was provided with in the UK before. But that did not of itself give rise to a legal complaint. Did Sir Richard fail to follow Ravek's policy without a good reason? I said in my judgment that Sir Richard had indeed failed to follow Ravek's policy. But I said that there were four main reasons for holding as a matter of law that Sir Richard had had a good reason for having done so. First, Ravek's policy was inward-facing and unpublished, and it concerned an area of national importance that was peculiarly within the expertise of law enforcement agencies, Ravek, and the royal household. Secondly, in this area of high political sensitivity, the court had considerable respect for Sir Richard and Ravek as decision makers, because they had unrivaled expertise and experience in the field of royal protection. Thirdly, the decision was explained in contemporaneous documentation to the effect that the Risk Management Board would not undertake further risk analyses for the Duke of Sussex because they were no longer required, given the alternative governance arrangements that were to be established on a case-by-case basis for the future. Sir Richard had, however, obtained 3 threat assessments for the Duke of Sussex during February 2020 before writing the decision letter. Fourthly, Sir Richard and Ravek had given compelling reasons for having reached the conclusion that the appropriate course was to establish bespoke arrangements for when the Duke returned to the United Kingdom on future visits. The Duke was in effect stepping in and out of the cohort of protection provided by Ravek. Outside the UK, he was outside the cohort, but when in the UK, his security would be considered as appropriate depending on the circumstances. It was impossible, I said in my judgment, to say that this reasoning was illogical or inappropriate. Indeed, it seemed sensible. Finally, even if there had been a risk analysis from the Risk Management Board, it would very likely have only confirmed the threat, vulnerability and impact levels which the Duke had faced when earlier risk analyses were undertaken. But it would have had nothing to say on the critical features of the changed situation, which were the need for protective security on future uncertain visits and the government's appetite for risk. The decisions taken in the decision letter and subsequently were taken, I said in my judgment, as an understandable and perhaps predictable reaction to the Duke of Sussex having stepped back from royal duties and having left the UK to live principally overseas. So the conclusion, in my judgment, with which my colleagues, Lord Justices Bean and Edis, agreed, was that the Duke of Sussex's appeal would be dismissed. So that concludes this afternoon's hearing. Thank you.
OK, well, that's the conclusion of the hearing there at the Royal Courts of Justice. Cameron Walker is with us, our royal correspondent. What did we just hear?
Yeah, we're just hearing that Prince Harry's been provided with a generally lesser level of protection than what he was provided in the UK before. His decision to step back from royal duties, obviously, but that did not give rise to a legal complaint.
Well, quite, and it appears that, I just got a little notification there which should give us more clarity. He has lost the challenge at the Court of Appeal, which is going to be a huge blow for Prince Harry. He has a couple of options now, but of course, the main point is that both the High Court and the Court of Appeal have upheld the Home Office committee decision to downgrade his security. In other words, he is not entitled to 24/7 taxpayer-funded police protection. He is no longer a working member of the royal family, and that is something he hasn't had since 2020. Now, this does not mean that Prince Harry has zero security when he comes to the UK. The level of security he gets is provided on a case-by-case basis. He needs to give the Home Office and the Metropolitan Police around 28 days notice before he comes back to the UK so they can decide what level of security he gets. And he has been back to the UK, hasn't he, on several occasions over the last couple of years, notably, of course, rushing back following the King's cancer diagnosis to see his father for half an hour or so. He's been back for various charity events as well. I think last May he was here for an Invictus Games event too. As his lawyer pointed out, there are credible threats against him. Notably, Al-Qaeda was said in open court. He, of course, said in his memoir Spare that he'd openly killed X number of Taliban fighters, describing them as chess pieces. That clearly didn't go down well with that particular terror group. But, of course, the fact remains, Prince Harry, although he's no longer a working member of the royal family, legally, he is still 5th in line to the throne. His children are legally 6th and 7th in line to the throne. The only way that would stop being the case is if there is an act of parliament, as in MPs vote, take him out of the line of succession.
He always believes he's being singled out, though, doesn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, in his battles with the media, in his battles here with his own father's government, does portray himself as a bit of a victim. Of course, he feels that what he's doing is just, but is it always proportionate?
Well, I think it was interesting to hear what the judge had to say there, because he said Prince Harry's sense of grievance does not translate into a legal argument as to why Ravek's decision is wrong. So in other words, although Prince Harry doesn't like the decision and thinks he's been treated unfairly, and perhaps some would say quite cynically he's throwing the toys out of the pram, that doesn't mean he's necessarily right. But it's
facts don't care about your feelings type statement.
Well, quite. The law is the law, and in this case, unfortunately for Prince Harry, the law says that that level of his downgrading of security was lawful. But it creates an awkward situation for the king and the relationship the king has with his youngest son, because Prince Harry, well, the king is head of state, and Prince Harry is suing His Majesty's government in His Majesty's courts. So the relationship there is just going to continue perhaps to break down. And I think that is a fundamental reason why the king hasn't seen his grandchildren since 2022 from Prince Harry's side of the family, and why the king and Prince Harry haven't really been speaking very often. The last time we know for a fact they spoke was in January 2024.
Cameron, before we went to the Court of Appeal there, we heard from you that the Duke believed his protection being withdrawn was done to trap him and Meghan in Britain, and that he was convinced that that decision was imposed as a form of punishment, essentially. You also said that this could go up to the Supreme Court, that we don't know at this stage if he'll apply for that permission. What do you expect the next steps may be from Prince Harry and his team?
Well, they're probably deciding as we speak what on earth to do next. The options are limited, to be quite frank. Yes, you're right, he could seek permission to bring this case up to the UK's highest court in Milan, which is the Supreme Court. But I think that probably only be granted if the case raises an issue that's kind of general public importance. Of course, I'm not a lawyer. You'd have to speak to a legal expert about that one. But again, if there is a credible threat, a new credible threat against Prince Harry, that clearly is new evidence. So he could launch a totally brand new judicial review, but that's going to take years.
Gosh.
And there's no guarantee that in 2 years' time he's not right back in the same position, having lost another Court of Appeal case. Of course, he still can rely on his own private security, but as we've discussed, his private security cannot carry firearms in the UK and don't have access to MI5 police protection. I doubt very much that he would lobby the government to change the law on this. So, his options are very limited.
Well, Cameron, it's very interesting indeed, isn't it? So there you go. Prince Harry has lost his security appeal at the High Court of Royal Courts of Justice. We've just heard that. So he'll be assessing his options.
Yes, and Sir Geoffrey Voss, for those who just weren't with us a moment ago, he's the Master of the Rolls in the Court of Appeal, saying that having studied the detailed documents, he said he could not say that the Duke's sense of grievance translated into a legal argument for a challenge against that security decision. Well, Cameron Walker, thank you very much for joining us for reaction to that highly dramatic decision.
Yeah, it's going to be a bruising one, isn't it, for Prince Harry? It's been dragging on for so long as it is.
Welcome back to Royal Sussex Squad, where we speak truth, lift up Harry and Meghan, and expose the calculated smear campaigns against them for exactly what they are: petty, outdated, and frankly exhausting. If you're tired of the same old royal narratives designed to tear down the Sussexes while shielding the real culprits behind palace walls, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. So now we're supposed to believe that the relationship between King Charles and Prince Harry is in tatters, because Harry supposedly can't be trusted. That's the latest headline being peddled by palace-friendly outlets and anonymous insiders who always seem to have just the right quote to paint Harry as the villain. But let's step back for a minute and ask, who's really breaking the bonds of trust here? According to these ever-so-convenient royal insiders, Harry is being accused of fighting the world and being tiring. Really? That's rich coming from the same establishment that has spent the past 5 years waging a relentless smear campaign against him, his wife, and even their children. Let's not forget that Meghan, an accomplished, intelligent woman, was dragged through the British tabloids with headlines so vicious they sparked global outrage. Now they say Harry sees enemies everywhere. Can you blame him? Imagine leaving your entire life behind, your titles, your military honours, your family, because the people closest to you refuse to protect you or your wife from a racist and hostile media. And now they want him to stop fighting. Let's be very clear. What Harry has been doing isn't fighting. It's surviving. It's speaking truth. It's protecting his family when the institution he was born into chose silence over support. And for that, he's called a traitor? No, that's not betrayal. That's bravery. Let's talk about this so-called breakdown in trust. The family claims they can't have private conversations with Harry because they don't trust that he won't go public. Oh, really? Funny how that concern didn't exist when palace aides were leaking stories about Meghan's so-called bullying to the press with zero evidence. Funny how private details about Harry and Meghan's royal exit, Meghan's mental health, and even baby Lilibet's birth certificate somehow found their way into the tabloids. Where was the concern for privacy then? But when Harry, in his own words, in interviews he consents to, finally speaks his truth, suddenly that's a betrayal? Let's not forget, earlier this month, Harry sat down with the BBC, not a tabloid, not a gossip rag, but the BBC, and said clearly that he wants reconciliation. He literally said, "There's no point in continuing to fight anymore. Life is precious. I don't know how much longer my father has." That is not the language of a man waging war. That's the voice of a son longing for connection, for healing, for peace. And yet his father, the King of England, refuses to speak to him. Over what? Security? Really? This is a man who has served 2 tours in Afghanistan, who has lived under death threats, who has a wife and 2 young children, and he's supposed to just accept substandard protection while visiting the UK. That's not a disagreement, that's neglect. Now, royal author Robert Jobson wants to play peacemaker by suggesting Harry should go to his father and say, "Sorry, I got this wrong." I have to ask, what exactly did he get wrong? Wanting to protect his family, calling out a toxic institution, telling the truth about how Meghan was treated. If anything, the apology should be going to Harry, from the family that failed him, from the press that vilified him, and from the so-called supporters of the monarchy who cheered every insult hurled his way. Jobson says Charles should take a shot in the dark and extend a last chance to build bridges. But why is it always Harry who's on trial? Why is the bar for forgiveness always placed at his feet, while others skate by untouched? Let's not forget, Charles has been no stranger to scandals, to mistakes, to controversy, And yet he was given space to grow, to be seen as a reformed and reflective monarch. Why isn't Harry given that same courtesy? Or could it be that the establishment was never prepared to deal with a royal who wouldn't play by their rules? Harry and Meghan have created a life for themselves outside the gilded cage of the monarchy. They are thriving in California, raising their children in peace and continuing their philanthropic work with integrity. And for that, they are punished. For daring to say, "We deserve better," they are cast as enemies of the crown. Let me say this clearly. The relationship isn't in tatters because of Harry. It's in tatters because the royal family refuses to grow. They demand obedience but offer no compassion. They want loyalty but give no protection. And they preach unity while practicing exclusion. Prince Harry has nothing to apologize for. He made a difficult decision to protect his wife, to shield his children, and to speak truth even when it hurt. That takes courage. That takes strength. And if King Charles truly understands forgiveness, as Jobson claims, then he should pick up the phone. Not for PR, not for appearances, but because it's the right thing to do. A real father would. And to the so-called insiders who keep feeding this tired narrative that Harry is paranoid, angry, or in battle mode, maybe take a look at the mirror. Because the world can see who's really fighting to keep this feud alive. It's not Harry, it's the ones who stand to lose power when the truth is told. Prince Harry's relationship with King Charles in tatters as senior royals do not trust Duke of Sussex. The Duke of Sussex is not on speaking terms with senior members of the royal family. The relationship between King Charles and Prince Harry has broken down due to a lack of trust, according to a source. The Duke of Sussex took part in a bombshell TV interview with the BBC earlier this month. A royal insider has called for Prince Harry to stop fighting the world if he wants to end his feud with the royal family. The insider said, "It's taken its toll. He, Prince Harry, sees things everywhere, and he picks battles with everybody, which is tiring. You can't live in permanent battle mode. You're a 40-year-old man. You've got to stop fighting the world." Even if the king were to offer an olive branch, the door is said to be firmly bolted due to the breakdown in trust. There is zero trust, an insider said. The family feel that private conversations with Harry are not possible. Royal author Robert Jobson, however, suggests a different approach. Jobson said, "Harry should have said to his father, 'Sorry, I've got this wrong, I've made a mistake, but I want to reconcile.' If you read between the lines, Harry was clearly reaching out to his father. The only way this is going to be resolved, and to stop this becoming the focus of the king's reign, is for Charles to take a shot in the dark and give Harry a last chance to build bridges. I think that was going to happen if he hadn't said what he said. The king is someone who understands forgiveness and has made mistakes himself. If anyone can be the bigger man in this situation, it would be him. Earlier this month, Prince Harry told the BBC about his hopes to reconcile with his family after he stepped down as a working royal in 2020. Harry, his wife Meghan Markle, and their son Prince Archie subsequently moved to the United States, where Harry and Meghan welcomed a daughter, Princess Lilibet. In an interview with the BBC, Harry revealed that his father, King Charles, is no longer speaking to him, mainly because of the ongoing row over his security arrangements. The father of two spoke of his desire to reconcile with the family, saying, "I would love reconciliation with my family. There's no point in continuing to fight anymore. Life is precious. I don't know how much longer my father has. He won't speak to me because of this security stuff." However, he conceded that any reconciliation would be in his family's hands, adding, "If they don't want that, that's entirely up to them." Here at Royal Sussex Squad we see through the smokescreen. We know the game. And we stand with Harry and Meghan, not because they're perfect, but because they were brave enough to walk away from a system that refused to change. So if you're tired of the spin, if you're here for truth, and if you believe in a future where integrity matters more than lineage, then hit that subscribe button. Tap that notification bell so you never miss a new video. And if you want to support the work we do to shine a light on the truth, drop us a super thanks. It means the world and helps keep this community strong. Until next time, remember, we don't follow the crown. we follow the truth. Stay bold, stay brilliant, and stay Royal Sussex strong.